What is up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of Process Sports Radio. I'm your host, Justin, and I'm super glad to have you guys here. Today, we're going to be reviewing The Last Dance, the amazing docuseries that's been going on. Episodes 7 and 8 debuted last night. And can you guys believe that there's only one more week left of this? I know I'm super upset about it because the fact is, this has filled a major void of mine with there being no sports. Every week at Sunday at 6 p.m., I know I have to be on the couch. I have to watch this, and nobody bothered me. And it's after that's gone, I don't know what I'm going to do without it. But regardless of that, I'm super glad, we've had it, and it's been amazing to see the inside of this great team, these great athletes, including the great Michael Jordan, right? So today I'm just going to go through the biggest aspects that I felt of that went on these two episodes and the biggest talking points of it. But before I do that, I just want to thank you guys for all the continuation and the support that I've been getting. Like I said, I'm not a finished product. I am working my way to make this the best thing ever. So like I said, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at Process Sports. All the audio platforms we're on: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, whatever your heart desires, we are on there. So I really do appreciate the support. Please stick with me. I am going to be doing more and more stuff. I have more interviews lined up, and trust me, more and more stuff, and it will be better and better. But let's go right back to The Last Dance. So last night, it starts off right before the 98 playoffs. The Bulls are playing the Nets. Nothing really crazy goes on in that series other than the fact that they almost lose the first game, which is nothing really a big storyline. But the one thing about that is if you saw the highlights from that series, they had that camera angle right on the baseline, basically right on the ground level. I thought that was amazing. And I think that needs to come back into the NBA. I know you guys probably seen it, whether it was on The Last Dance or clips from the 2001 NBA All-Star game. I think that camera angle is unbelievable. It has such a great perception, and you get such a good viewing angle. I think it's crazy cool. But definitely that's just a side tidbit, I guess. But going back to the documentary, they kind of slide back to 93 where we kind of left off last week. So the Bulls had just completed their three-peat by defeating Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns. Michael Jordan is clearly exhausted and tired, and just, it looks like he's done with the game of basketball. So he announces his retirement. But before we go that, Michael and his father were the only two people in that last game that knew that would be his last game, right? So Michael and his dad were super close. Michael considered his father not only a fatherly figure, but his best friend. And then during that summer, Michael's father goes missing, and tragically they find out that he had been murdered, right? So, I believe the story goes, he was in visiting some friends in another town in North Carolina, was driving back to Charlotte to catch a flight to Chicago, and he never showed up for his flight, and he went missing. And they found his body eventually a couple weeks later in a creek. He was shot. So it was definitely a tragic event. But what was even more tragic was the fact that they linked Michael to the murder, and the fact that it was his gambling problem. So the conspiracy theorists believe that it was the mob that killed Michael's dad to send a message saying, hey, you better not think that you're bigger than us, right? And you better pay up your debts. For me, I was on the record of saying the fact that I believe Jordan retired because it was a secret suspension because of the NBA investigating him for gambling. But for the murder of his father, I kind of don't want to believe that. I kind of feel it's kind of far-fetched. I feel that was just a random act. James Jordan was a pretty prevalent person. You could have, he's been on TV so much probably, and in papers that people could recognize him. So that made him a target for crime. And it was a heartless and gutless act of crime that happened to him. And it was definitely tragic. But, going back to Michael, clearly he was devastated about losing his father. And as anybody would be losing a parent. I could never imagine losing a parent. And I'm sure there's people out there that have lost parents that, it grieves with them every day, right? So definitely it's something that's very hard to deal with and stuff like that. So that I would understand why Michael would want to step away from the game. But in the back of my head, I still vehemently believe the fact is when Michael Jordan would decide to retire back in 1993, it was because of gambling. David Stern saw that Michael Jordan had a gambling problem, and he thought, okay, well, if I suspend and openly suspend my biggest star, my cash cow, the guy who took my league and made it probably the most popular league in North America next to the NFL. Brought in all this money for all the owners, the league, drove ratings and all of that. If I suspend him, the league's going to get that bad perception that it had right back to before Bird and Magic, where, guys were doing hardcore drugs. They were, prostitution was very big in there. They were not in the best shape. The games were not even live broadcasted, right? And he didn't want to go back down that road. So I believe that David Stern went to Jordan and said, look, you have an option. I'm going to suspend you for 18 months, but you can say you retire, right? And you can create a diversion. If you want to play baseball, whatever you want to do, take the attention away from you, but you cannot play the game of basketball in the NBA for 18 months, right? Now people say, oh, why would he do that? Why would he do that? But here's the thing. Why would Jordan walk away from the game of basketball he loves and he was so uberly competitive? And it's evident if you've watched every episode of this documentary how uberly competitive Michael Jordan was. Why would somebody who's that competitive walk away from the game of basketball that he's been dominating and that he could win a 4th straight title with to go play baseball, right? I don't understand that. I don't understand how that wiring in his brain could be. Now, like he stated and Stern has stated and everybody stated, they denied it. Michael was tired. Michael had had enough of the media scrutiny. His father's death had something to do with it. He just needed a break. Okay, I guess you could kind of get away from that. But if they're also portraying this competitive freak of nature, why would he walk away from it? For me, I don't believe that. And then even in his press conference, like he stated, if I basketball retiring means I can do whatever I want. And if that means I want to come back and play the game of basketball, I can play the game of basketball. Generally, when somebody retires from something, they don't go back, right? So, I mean, that was definitely a little bit fishy and something. That was some signals that I got. This was a secret suspension because he didn't want to embarrass Jordan and his public image that much and ruin it. So, and he knew that was bad for business when Michael came back, right? So, that's why I believe it's a secret suspension. But, of course, Stern, Jordan, they all deny, like I mentioned. And allegedly that Jordan said, I would have retired in 92 if I could, but I had the Dream Team obligations and a competitive freak that he was, wanted to get that three-peat because Bird and Magic never got that. So I really don't think that that's the whole story. I think there really was a suspension involved because he had that whole gambling investigation, and the NBA probably did find out that, hey, this guy's got a severe gambling problem, right? But anyway, Michael retires. He goes plays baseball. His dad was a baseball player. His dad always dreamed of his sons playing baseball, so that was their final dream of playing baseball. So Michael goes. He joins the Chicago White Sox, who were owned by Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Chicago Bulls. So he allows Michael to come into spring training. They send Michael to AA. And for those of you guys that don't know, baseball is basically like a gradual tier leveling. You got to basically level up every time to get to the big leagues, right? So they send Michael to AA, right, where it's the minor leagues where the majority of the prospects are, the high value prospects, all that play AA ball. So Jordan goes, rides the bus, plays in the minor leagues. He actually starts off pretty good. He has a 13-game hit streak, right? And everything. Oh my God, he's gonna go to the major leagues and stuff like that. A month later, he starts getting breaking balls. A pitcher starts catching on to him, and he starts whiffing out on everything. Eventually, I think he ended up with like a 200 batting average and like drove 50 runs in. Which, if you look at an average baseball player, that's kind of like the average stats you get with it. I think he got 1 home run. But what really pissed me off was the fact that they were saying, if he had stuck with it, he would have made the major leagues. If he would have made the major leagues, he would have been ripping it up in AA. He would have been hitting like 300, 350, maybe 400, right? He would have been driving in, 70-plus runs, maybe 15 to 20 home runs, right? Why would a guy hitting 200 and getting 50 runs batted in suddenly be this hot prospect and join the major leagues? I don't believe that. But the one thing I will give Jordan credit is this. He busted his ass off to become a baseball player. Maybe not a great one, but he became a serviceable baseball player, right? So he was, of course, trained to be a basketball player his whole life, trained, and then he had to switch it and build his body up to be a baseball player. So him and his legendary trainer, Tim Grover, basically rearranged his whole workout plan, everything, retrained his body and different muscles that he needed to be an efficient baseball player, which you have to give him credit for. He put the work in the gym. Also, he did so much batting practice, took so many reps and stuff like that to hone his craft. Now, it wasn't to play that level of baseball, you got to be dedicated to that sport for many, many years. Now, Michael was just picking it up after a long break. I think the last time he played baseball was, when he was 17 back in high school. So, you got to give him credit for that much of it, right? And also, it's hard for one athlete to play two sports at such a high level, right? There's been two real athletes that have done it at such a high level, and that's been Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson. And you'll never see anything like that ever again. Bo was an all-star center fielder and a Pro Bowl running back, and he was considered the greatest athlete of all time, just on athletic talent alone, just on athletic specimen skills. That's it. He's like a legendary mythical figure, and without that tragic injury, we never knew what Bo Jackson would have came up to. But some consider him to be the greatest all-around athlete, athletically, skill-wise in sports history. Anyway, going back to the dual sport athlete thing, there will never ever be an athlete playing one sport and jump into another sport, whether that's MJ retiring and playing baseball, because no athlete would ever do that. No athlete in the top of their game at their sport will stop and jump to baseball or jump to another sport and play. That will never ever happen ever, right? You know why? And just like Deion and Bo, nobody will play the same sport simultaneously at the same time. Never will happen. You know why? Because the people that write the checks, those billionaire owners, will never ever ever allow their superstar player, the guy that brings them in all that money, all that revenue through tickets, merchandise, whatever, they will never, ever, ever allow another athlete, one of their athletes, to make money for another billionaire owner playing another sport. Never allowed. They'll never put that asset, because they don't treat them like people, their assets to them get depreciate, whether that's through injury or something else happening in that sport, right? You look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes, I think it was a couple years ago, they had to write in his contract, you cannot play pickup basketball because we don't want you getting hurt. We don't want our franchise quarterback, our superstar quarterback, to injure himself playing pickup basketball in the summertime. So Patrick Mahomes had to give up basketball, even though he might have played basketball his whole career, right? You think the Seahawks allow Russell Wilson to go to Yankee spring training to actually try to make the team? No. It's all just a publicity stunt by the Yankees and by Russell Wilson, right? It's to increase. Yes, Russell Wilson might be a great baseball player as well, but the Yankees let him do a couple of drills, take a part of batting practice, and get in a game, take a one or two at bats during the spring training, right? That's it. It will never happen because those owners do not want their athlete, their cash cow, to get hurt making money for another owner. They do not want that at all. They want to protect that asset and maximize that monetary value of that asset regardless, and they don't care if it upsets them or anything. It's all about money to those guys. So you will never see anything that would happen with Jordan playing another game. Playing baseball again. You will never see a Deion Sanders, a Bo Jackson, or anything like that ever again, because it comes down to money and protecting your asset. It will never happen again. But so anyway, Jordan goes, plays baseball, does the whole thing, and the baseball strike happens. The league shuts down. They want to put replacement players in. Jordan says, "No, I'm not doing that." And he goes back to Chicago, starts practicing, and gets that itch for the game back, and he utters the iconic words. He didn't utter them. He wrote on a piece of paper, and they presented it to the world. Simply, "I am back," right? So Jordan comes back, and he sucked the first game. Give or take. He shot 7 of 28 for the first game back, and it was rust. So that year when he had come back, right, the Bulls were struggling. The year previously, they were ripping it up. Scottie Pippen had emerged as a great player, probably the best player in the league, or second best behind Olajuwon, right? The triangle was so efficient because Pippen was a willing passer, and the triangle was working so well ever before than it did with Michael, because Phil was able to have all the pieces and that sharing the ball mentality. Although Scottie did quit on the team in the playoffs against the Knicks, where they coached the ball, and Scottie looked horrible by doing that, like quitting on his team and giving up the ball. Not giving up the ball, not being a team player and just pouting on the bench. That's a black image on his mark for the rest of his career, and it's something that he's not going to live by, and that they highlighted during the documentary. But yeah, they had this success in 94, but in 95 they were struggling, so Jordan comes back. He's not running 23, though. He's running 45, his baseball number, because he wanted a different start, because his father wasn't there, all of that stuff. So completely understandable. So Jordan comes back, but like I said, he's in baseball player shape. He's not in basketball player shape. So yes, he dropped 55 in the Garden when he came back, and he had some good games, and he got him to the playoffs, and they run him to the Orlando Magic, right? But since Michael was not in Michael's shape, right, he was in baseball shape. He might have been 75% of Michael, right? He looked really bad in that series against that upstart Orlando Magic team that had a young, skinny, fast Shaquille O'Neal, up-and-coming superstar, probably one of the biggest stars in the game at that time, Penny Hardaway, who was getting comparisons from Magic Johnson, as I mentioned before. They had former guy Horace Grant. They had Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott. They had a real squad, right? So they beat the Bulls in 6 games, and Michael didn't look good. Michael looked tired. He, was more fatigued, more lethargic. He didn't play very good, right? And that was like a chink in his armor, and that, again, remotivated him for the next three-peat that was upcoming. So during that summer, they're filming Space Jam in 95. What does Jordan do? The directors of Space Jam build the Jordan Dome, they called it, where it was full-on basketball court, full-on gym. And what did Michael do? He trained, filmed a movie, trained, and played basketball. So he ripped his baseball body down and rebuilt his basketball body up. And he played those pickup games, and he got that competitive edge back. And what happened was they started the 95-96 season. And what happened? They ended up having the greatest season of all time. But the ending of the episode 7, before I get into the 96 season, that whole season was this. When you look at that season, right? When you look at the ending of that episode, what was Jordan so emotional about was the fact that he was considered a dick, a prick, and an asshole. And he was. He wasn't a good teammate. Michael Jordan expected so much of his teammates, that it drove them crazy, that they hated him, that he punched Steve Kerr in the face, right? The fact of the matter is this: when you want to win, when you want to be a champion, you have to make sacrifices. You have to step on toes. You cannot be liked by everybody in order to be successful in anything you do in life, right? For example, look at like Kobe Bryant. He had Shaquille O'Neal and Dwight Howard hate him both because he expected so much of his teammates to stay in the gym, work hard, do everything he was doing. Same thing with Michael. He expected his teammates to have the same commitment to excellence and to winning at all means cost because he did. And if you didn't like it, then you were in his bad books and he was going to chew you up alive, right? So Jordan, he expected so much, and it really rubbed people the wrong way. But he had to do that because he had gone through so much punishment. He had gone through so much abuse that if he did not have his teammates in the corner with him like that, they were not going to win anything because he expected such a high standard of winning. And you know what? I can respect that. Yes, he might have been a bad teammate, but hey, if you're doing all this to win and become a champion, that's okay, because at the end of the day, who writes history? The champions, the winners do. And if you got to be a dick and an asshole to be successful, yes, it might not be the right tactic, but hey, if you drag everybody along with you and you guys are at the top of the mountain, you cannot hate on somebody for that, because that's all he knew, and that's how he played. And that's why he was so emotional, because you can see the fact that it really got to him, because everybody was so against him and felt that he was such a bad person when all he wanted to do was win. All he wanted to do was win. That's it. That's all he was wired to do, was win. And it's so evident that Michael, all he cared about was winning, and he didn't care if he pissed people off, right? Right? So, they're coming off that season. They lost to Orlando. Michael's fueled by that. He did not want to lose to Orlando again. He wanted to beat Orlando, right? So Jordan is back in his basketball peak. Jordan has now his Rodman. They now have Pippen, right, back. The whole squad is back. What do they proceed to do? They proceed to win 72 games and only lose 10, right? What do? They proceed to win the title, right? And biggest things about that season were this. There's three takeaways from that season. One, like I said, they won Orlando, and what did they do? They swept Orlando. Orlando had Shaq, Penny, and that whole squad again, and they had won 60-plus games that year too, I think, and they swept them in the playoffs, right? Then Seattle needs another basketball team back. Seattle needs a basketball team. You can tell those Sonics deserve to be back in Seattle. Seattle was a basketball. They weren't a shitty basketball city like Vancouver was, right? Vancouver, the Grizzlies lost every time because they were, different factors caused them to lose. But hey, Seattle had a championship before. They had the Kemp and Payton era, which was iconic, right? They had Ray Allen. They had all these great players, and the team got stripped away from them, and now they're in OKC. So Seattle does deserve a team. That's takeaway number one. Another thing about Seattle is this. You got to look at Gary Payton and Sean Kemp and think those are such a dynamic duo, man. Think about Lob City, but a lot better. Gary Payton was probably one of the greatest trash talkers of all time, and also one of the greatest defensive point guards we've ever seen, right? Sean Kemp was like Blake Griffin, but skinnier and so much more explosive. They had a great team, that Sonics team did. And it's just sad that they never won a title because they ran into the Bulls. But hey, they beat the Rockets with Olajuwon. They beat the Jazz with Stockton and Malone, right? They were a really, really good team. One of the most talented teams. I was reading, some people consider them the most talented team that the Bulls ever beat, right? And they had gone, they're down 3-0, and they throw Gary Payton on Michael Jordan, and they end up winning 2 games and eventually losing in 6, right? But definitely, that little moment with the Seattle Supersonics doesn't display how much Seattle deserves a team back. They really need a team. That is a basketball city. That is a sports city. They need a team back there. And I don't care. As being somebody from Vancouver who's so close to Seattle, we kind of look at that as that's our outlet to see professional sports at the highest level other than the NHL. So if we don't ever get our team back, I definitely want to see one back in Seattle because they deserve it. Those fans deserve it. They're passionate basketball fans there. And anybody that would tell you that they produced great players like Zach LaVine, Nate Robinson, Jamal Crawford, all those guys, right? So definitely the Sonics need to come back to Seattle, and the NBA needs Seattle back. And hopefully it does. I know they're building a new arena. Hopefully they do expand eventually to Seattle. So hopefully that eventually takes place in the near future. Last takeaway, and probably the biggest takeaway from episode 8 and that 96 season was this. 72-10 don't mean a thing without the ring. That moniker can be applied to everything in life, whether you're championships, whether you're in a relationship or whatever, right? That does not mean anything in sports if you do not win the title. That 72-10 team would not be remembered if they did not win the title. You look at the team like the Golden State Warriors, the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. Nobody remembers the 73 wins at all. What do we remember? We remember them choking in the finals and losing to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers and getting their hearts snatched out of them so badly that what do after they lose Game 7? They get on the phone and they call Kevin Durant and they cry and they whine and they want him to come and save them. Right? Nobody remembers the fact that they dominated the whole year and Steph Curry won unanimous MVP and all of this, all of that. What do we remember? We remember Kyrie hitting the shot in Game 7. We remember LeBron blocking Iguodala. That's all we will always remember, right? Like I said before, history is written by the champions, right? So champions write their history. Nobody remembers the losers. Nobody cares, right? So look at that Warriors team, right? Nobody cares. Like I said, I don't care that they won 79. It doesn't mean shit. It doesn't matter because they lost. They did not win the ring. You look at the New England Patriots, right? When they won 18-1. Does anybody remember that they broke all those records? Does anybody care? Yeah, it's nice. It's cool. But nobody remembers that. What do we remember? We remember the helmet catch by David Tyree. We remember the scramble by Eli Manning to throw the ball to him. And we remember the New York Giants shocking the world and winning the Super Bowl. Like I said, they can have a banner up there and say that we were the best team of all time. No, you're not. You did not win the ring. You do not get to call yourself the best because, like I said, history is written by the champions, right? So, all of that said, right? What do? Jordan and the Bulls won the title. Why are they remembered so much? Why are they so revered? Why are they so iconic? Why was this documentary? Because they were champions. Like I said, champions write their own history. So Jordan, the Bulls, all these champions, right? That's why they're remembered. If you don't win, you're not remembered. Again, bring it closer to home. Those Canucks teams. Does anybody care that we won a President's Trophy? No. We remember the fact that they lost in Game 7. They got embarrassed at home. And we rioted. Nobody cares outside of Vancouver about that. Nobody cares the fact that they broke records. They were such a dominant team that they were like iconic. Any of those teams, nobody cares. If you do not win in anything, nobody cares. And that's a harsh way of saying it, but that's again why Jordan was so pressured on winning, because if you won, you tell your own story, right? Everybody can remember you as a winner. And I think that's the problem in sports now, is the fact that everybody's so focused on winning, because if you win, then nobody can call you a loser, right? But that's only, like I said before, the problem with that is this: people are looking for an easy track to win rather than the process of winning, right? But going back to winning, this is why the whole documentary is so big, because the Bulls won. They are winners, right? Nobody cared about the Jazz or about the Sonics anymore, about the Blazers, about any of those teams anymore, because they'd lost. They're irrelevant. They're just footnotes, right? The team that is remembered, the Celtics, the Lakers, the Bulls, they're winners, right? You look at any sport, what teams are remembered? The ones that won. Nobody cares what the teams that lost. The Patriots, they won for 20 plus years. The Spurs, they won. That's the biggest thing in sports. If you are a winner, you'll be remembered forever, right? And that's the biggest takeaway I took from episode 8 is the fact that if you're a winner, you'll be remembered forever. If you're a loser, you're just a forgotten thing, right? So that's kind of my biggest takeaways from the episode 7 and 8. Like I said, I have some couple great interviews coming up, and we only have one more week of this, so I have one more review left. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and like I said, I'll talk to you guys later, and take care.